This is A World on Purpose.
A purposeful life is the most important kind and the most valuable kind of life.
Every choice that we make makes a difference, for better or worse.
I loved walking in a village and seeing the before and after.
This is the podcast dedicated to those humans choosing to live larger by working for the greater good. And these are their stories. Stories of hope and of true change that come from living on purpose.
What if you were to suddenly say there are no challenges, there are only opportunities?
Regardless of where you come from, your financial identity should determine where you end up in life.
I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and my hope is that my inspiring guests will take you on an introspective journey that helps you tap into your own pivot to purpose, bringing greater meaning to your life. Welcome to A World on Purpose. Adversity and struggle can offer great opportunity for personal growth, but it can also translate to solutions for the needs of humanity. Enter the Birthing Project, whose roots rest on the struggles and lessons learned during the Civil Rights Movement. Listen to the organization's powerful and inspirational founder, Kathryn Hall-Trujillo, share her story of being a young girl at the epicenter of the Civil Rights Movement and how this shaped the principles and far-reaching impact of the Birthing Project. This is a beautiful example of the old adage, we rest on the shoulders of those who have come before us. Hello, everyone, and thank you again for tuning into A World on Purpose. I am your host, as you know, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and obviously every week our whole goal is to bring you the most inspiring, beautiful human beings on the planet that are doing great work in this world to lift humanity. And today is really special for me, actually. I've really developed an amazing bond with this particular woman, my guest, who's going to be telling you incredible stuff today. Kathryn Hall-Trujillo. She's amazing, and she is my guest, and I'm going to be inviting her to tell you her story, but I'd like to give you just a little bit of information about her, which is pretty outstanding. She is an adventurer, teacher, community elder, mentor, and coach, specializing in local and global public health. She's an Ashoka Global Social Entrepreneur, an MBE Legacy Vanguard Fellow, and a midwife. And she's also the founder of a pretty impressive project called the Birthing Project USA. She's an advisor to the U.S. Cuba Medical School Scholarship Program and also a community professor. And I'd like to please welcome my amazing guest, Kathryn Hall-Trujillo.
Wow. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you. We talk a lot, but this is the first time we've talked a lot in public.
I know, it's true. And it's kind of exciting, right? For you to get to come on in and share your story. That's a pretty impressive background, but wait till people get to hear all of your story in your own words. So Kathryn, what I love to do, first of all, thank you so much for coming on this show. You know, my incredible enamored state with you. I think you're one of the most outstanding women I've ever met, honestly, in my career, in my life. And it's just an honor to have you here. So I really appreciate your time. One of the things I love to do in the first segment of our 3-part series with you is talk a little bit about the whole point of A World on Purpose is to talk about what I call your pivot to purpose or your origin story. And I think people would, obviously your background is incredibly impressive, but would love to know from your own words when that moment was, or maybe a couple moments it was in your life when you realized your life was meant for purpose and not just profit. Could you please share that with our amazing audience?
I certainly would like to do that. And I like to do that because I get a lot of joy from listening to someone say, and this is Kathryn Hall-Trujillo, and this is what she does. And the reason I get so much joy from hearing it is because it reminds me that no matter how humble your background is or where you start off, you have a whole story ahead of you. You know, and so when I hear this part of where I am in my life right now, you know, at over 70 years old, I do understand that song that says, my soul looks back and wonder how I got over. Mm. And so that's in every one of us. And so my every one of us started because I was born into a family that loved me and that took care of me and was firmly rooted in who they are and a part of the way that they define themselves as I wasn't just born to a mother who had a family. I was born to a family that was part of a community And I was born to a community that was identified both on the inside and outside as a people. We were identified as Black people. And so, as Black people, you, especially when I was born in the South, pre-civil rights days, and when people could remember a relative who actually was enslaved, we knew we had work to do. And so that wasn't something that you learn later. That is just something that comes like you learn to walk, you learn to talk, you learn to, eat with eating utensils or whatever. And you learn that because you're Black, that's a very, very special thing. And you have a very, very special place in the world. So it was no accident that because of my family, I was in the civil rights movement. In fact, I spent most of my 10th grade either in jail or in the Freedom House or somewhere doing what we call movement work, because the Arkansas Birthing Project was located right in my paternal grandmother's kitchen.
Wow.
And I didn't really understand that I had a choice, because when we heard people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talking to us and the big boys, and of course I had a crush on like Andrew Young and Jesse Jackson and those guys, because I was in high school and they were, the good looking guys in college. But it didn't seem that we were choosing to do something on purpose. It was literally that this is what you do. This is the culture. This is what you do. But the thing that came out of being in the movement was a clear understanding that we were standing on shoulders, that people were marching and dying and losing their jobs every single day, so that we could get the opportunity, because we were the generation that was literally going to benefit from going to an integrated school, of having an opportunity to go to an integrated college, of having a choice about neighborhood, of perhaps not being afraid to walk outside after dark. And so I had a clear, not only understanding that I was supposed to be doing these things, but it was being done for me, that I was going to be the first group of people to really take advantage of this in a mass kind of way. So I, on the other hand, was like in a hurry, fell in love, got married, had a baby. That didn't quite work out. And I literally was too embarrassed to go back to my parents and say, I did everything that you told me not to do, and look at the position I'm in. So when it got to the point that I knew I could not stay where I was another day, I got on a bus to go visit some relatives. But when I got there, I was too embarrassed to show up there too. So I ended up living in the bus station for a while with my 2 children.
Oh my goodness.
But the good news is that during that time, I had been accepted into UCLA's first Economic Opportunities Program. And the Economic Opportunities Program was the first wave of economic development for the country. And basically every school, every university that received federal funding had to have X number of students in order to maintain that funding. And I can promise you, my class was the Bad News Bears. I was probably, again, one of the stars of the class, because in spite of everything that had happened and being in jail and dropping out and doing the whole thing, I always was a good student.
Yeah.
So I literally moved from the bus station onto campus at UCLA with my 2 children. UCLA had to change because we were the first group. I had 2 children, so we had to build a child care center. There were certain things we had to do. My son has a whole page in the UCLA yearbook for that year, because he had to go to class or people had to babysit him. We had to make changes that we didn't even think were historic changes, but it was just helping society accommodate to the changes that were happening. And after UCLA, I went on to graduate school, and majored in international public health, representing the community I came from, Compton, as a developing country. Because at that time, people were dying from diseases, communicable diseases they should not have. And that led, of course, to me finally saying, "Phew, I have a job. I'm going to be working for the state of California." And what else could a woman want?
Wow.
As it turned out, I ended up on Governor Brown when he was governor the first time, our hippie governor. I ended up on his think tank team that he brought into California as part of, I was under I would say my mentor was Congresswoman Maxine Waters. And she made sure during that period of time that I remembered who I was, that even though I'd gotten the American dream and I'd gotten that piece of the pie, that I still was accountable to her and to the community that I came from. And at one point, I was working on an assignment where the state was just paying way too much money for babies who were born sick. And it was my assignment to see what the state could do to try to pull some of the money that we were spending on sick babies to take care of babies that were trying to do an earlier intervention. And at that point in my head, I had an idea that I tried out. And the idea was that women who in the community who were a little bit older, like myself, and who had children, would be connected to a woman who was going to be a high cost for the state of California. And the first woman in this project that I conceived was I matched her up with myself. Her baby died. And a part of being a big sister to a pregnant woman was that you take off your state, suit. You take off your state high heels, your little pumps. You leave your briefcase at home, and you are with your sister when she goes for a medical appointment. And in this case, I was with her when she went to her medical appointment, and it turned out that her baby was dying. So I had to be with her during that process. And after the baby was born, but lived on life support for 10 days, I had to teach her how to say goodbye to her dead baby. And at first, I held the baby and said goodbye to the baby. And then I gave the baby to her so she could hold her own baby and say goodbye. And at that moment, I realized that in the United States, the opening of our report, our Commission on Infant Mortality, said at the rate that we were losing babies in the United States, that by the year 2000, babies in the last century, then all soldiers.
Can you repeat that? Your Zoom cut out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The opening statement of the Federal Commission on Infant Mortality basically said at the rate that we were losing babies, by the year 2000, we would have lost more babies during the 1900s than all the soldiers we lost in combat in World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And it just flashed in my head how you drive by the Veterans Cemetery and you see the flags of all the soldiers. If you saw a little flag for every baby that we had lost, who had been born, took his first breath, but did not live to be 1 year old, we would have more little babies with flags than grown soldiers. That was my aha moment. That was the time when all of my experience, all of my education met my history and my heart and soul and spirit and what I knew to be true, that I understand this. I understand this, and I know what to do. So I can tell you that 1 year later from that particular day, I no longer work for the state of California. I just one day did not go back to work again. I have not had a job since then. And this is what I do. And that was the birth of the Birthing Project.
Oh my gosh, Kathryn, thank you so much for sharing that journey. I think it's really meaningful for people to hear how not only your own life experience of the lessons you learned through these, challenges and that have happened, and what you call, they're not mistakes, they're life experiences. And then each one of them was clearly something that set you up for doing what you were going to do for these beautiful babies that were born through the Birthing Project. We're going to dive deeper into the Birthing Project. I love where that came from, and I think most people will feel a relatability to whatever it is they're trying to create comes out of our own personal experience and some of our professional, but usually it's something triggered by a moment that is impactful and meaningful like that. And so give us just a little snippet of what the Birthing Project is, and then we're going to dive deeper into part 2 around the details of that and what kind of impact you've had with the project. And when did it start?
The Birthing Project is so simple. I'm almost embarrassed to say what it is.
Oh no, simple the better. That makes people feel like I can do it.
So remember I said that I was on the think tank originally. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I ended up in a division of the Department of Health that looked at emerging issues in California to decide what course we should take. Mm-hmm. So at that point, we were spending about $300,000 to keep a baby alive for 90 days. And then after that, more than likely, that baby was going to end up in custody of the state. The mother was going to have a few more babies that were going to end up in the custody of the state. And so the idea was to make an intervention that would save the state of California money. And so the idea of the Birthing Project was really just to use experienced women in the community to be like a big sister or a guide to a woman who was going to, I'm almost embarrassed to say this because all of it's like financial, to be a guide to make sure that a woman that was going to be high risk in terms of cost would be connected to the resources that she needed. Mm-hmm. In order to reduce the chances of her having a baby that was going to be sick and would cost a lot of money for medical expenses, but also what was going to happen with the legal system, what was going to happen with foster care. And so my solution was that we would use these women and they would make sure we took advantage of everything, and that would reduce the cost. The state of California didn't actually say no. They just never said yes. It just got caught up in the bureaucracy. And so my boss was the kind of person that said, if you have an idea, don't tell me about it. Show me that it would work. Wow. So I had basically found 9 other women and myself. There were 10 of us and 1 man. We were all matched up with the woman who was there because she was going to be high cost to the state. And the idea was that we would stay with that woman during the pregnancy, be there with her during the birth of her baby, and then stay with her for a year after the baby is born to make sure the baby got well baby care, mom got well woman care, and that she was connected to school or work, great parenting skills. And at the end of the year, we were supposed to have a birthday party and say, good luck, you can do this. Well, that was 32 years ago. So
I love it.
And the Birthing Project has been replicated about 108 times in 13 countries since then. So much for my great, state career.
Yeah, but you can thank the state career for that genius impetus. I mean, what a wonderful testament, actually, to most people. I think, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think there's some skepticism about projects that are initiated at a government level actually being successful. Or being started there. And so it's kind of nice that it was started within that framework, and then was able to actually exponentially, as a model, to be able to be put out other places. But it did become independent at some point, correct? It wasn't a state program.
No, it was never a state program.
Okay.
I don't even know what I was thinking about, except when people tell you no all the time, then you don't know what's reasonable no. So a new foundation was starting in California at that time, the Sierra Health Foundation.
Okay.
And they basically had their first proposal for funding or call to action was, what will your dream be? And so I actually applied for funding, even though I was a state employee. I don't know what I was thinking about. And my dream was that every baby would have a, a person be like their mom's big sister or grandmother or auntie or someone before they were born.
That's great.
And we were funded. So I was funded like $350,000, but I didn't have any way of accepting the money because I didn't have an organization. And the foundation gave me like 90 days to figure this out. And that's what happened. We ended up finding someone that could accept the money for us. And the grant, the program manager said, and you all have to get yourself organized into a 501c3, and we're going to give you a year to get that. And so,
wow, that's very cool.
It was my dream that got funded. How many people could say that?
Not a lot. I mean, it's one thing to have a dream. It's another thing to kind of like get started on the dream, but another one to get it funded and implemented. It's pretty extraordinary, actually. And what year was that?
That was 1988. So
Wow.
we were actually the very, very, very first African-American grassroots, community-based maternal and child health organization in the country that was funded. So we had an opportunity to actually do it from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the dream. This is how we think it should be done. I don't think we were sophisticated enough to know what we were supposed to be doing. And we just said no to a lot of things that were traditional and did what we thought needed to happen at that point.
Well, I think there's something to be said sometimes for going with your intuition, as opposed to necessarily structure. Structure's great, but sometimes just trusting your heart and your gut can be the thing that takes it to the next level. I definitely would like to dive deeper into now the details of the kind of work you've done with the Birthing Project. So we're going to go into that in part 2 of our 3-part series with Kathryn Hall-Trujillo. But before we do, and we wrap this amazing segment, Kathryn, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Okay, the best place to find me is on our website at birthingprojectusa.org. And I'm KHT at birthingprojectus.org for email.
Great. Okay. And everyone, please, if you're interested in learning about the Birthing Project, obviously you can go there. You'll also be able to find it on the A World on Purpose website under Kathryn's segments and her bio and all of that great stuff. Please come back and tune in to part 2 and 3 of this amazing series with Kathryn. I think you're going to be really inspired and fascinated by what she's created and some new things that she's been kind of diving into as well. Thank you, Kathryn, for this part 1 of the part 3 series. And thank you, everyone, for tuning into World on Purpose. Come back for parts 2 and 3. Hello, everyone, and thank you again for tuning into A World on Purpose. I'm Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and we are embarking on part 2 of our part 3 series with Miss Kathryn Hall-Trujillo. Actually, she's a Mrs., so we probably need to get some shout out to the Mr. over there. I'm really, really excited to be able to dive into a little bit deeper about the project that she touched on. In part 1, we obviously talked about her origin story and her incredible aha moment when she wanted to pivot her life to purpose in a more directed way. And in part 2, we're going to kind of go into this incredible organization that she's developed, started over 30 years ago, called the Birthing Project. So Kathryn, welcome back to A World on Purpose. And thank you, as always, for your time.
Well, so good to be here with you.
You too. I just love seeing your face. It always brings me so much joy.
Well, it takes one to know one.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'll take that.
All righty then.
Right. From one light to another. I'm just so moved by what you shared in the beginning. And you were just sharing, like when we were in between segments, a little story that really was part of the reason that you did this project. If you don't mind sharing about the little baby that you lost, the first one, and what that meant to you, and why you say we can segue into the details around the Birthing Project from there.
Okay. And, I can actually talk about him. His name was DeAndre,
Mm-hmm.
because I being a midwife, I often have to say to people that our babies come to teach us what lessons they need to teach us in whatever amount of time it takes. So some come and they last for a moment, and some, are here for 100 years or whatever. And so DeAndre is now a little angel that sits on my shoulder, and I owe so much to him because he got my attention and taught me something in his short life. But in the 10 days that he did live, he taught me, as I held his little body after he passed away, before giving him to his mom to do the same, he taught me the meaning of words that I had used every single day and the health professionals use every single day in our professional life. We talk about infant mortality and infant morbidity and maternal mortality and morbidity, and we don't put faces on them.
Mm-hmm.
So holding DeAndre in my arms helped me remember that when we are counting infant mortality and morbidity, we are counting dead babies. They're not numbers.
Mm-hmm.
They are counting dead babies. That's what I learned from him. But it was also what gave me the vocabulary to actually talk about it with people in a way that made sense.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to hear about dead babies and dead mommies.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone actually cares. It's just figuring out how do you say it in a way that it doesn't hurt so much. So DeAndre came for 10 days and rocked my world. And here I am now. And just like with anyone who passes away, they live as long as you say their name.
That's beautiful. And it's true for any of us who've lost people that are dear to us. I really believe that. That's a great place to start around this inspiration you had for the birthing project. So why don't you talk a little bit about how that works and what kind of work you've been able to do in terms of the impact in the lives you've been able to touch, locally and globally.
So for people who understand the cost of not caring for people as close to the beginning of their lives as possible, whether you're talking about the cost of healthcare, whether you're talking about the cost of people not being able to have access to or take advantage of education.
Mm-hmm.
If you talk about the number of people who end up being incarcerated, if you talk about the social determinants of health, we realize that it's much easier to fix something before it becomes a problem
Mm-hmm.
than to try to take care of it once we have the problem. So the magic of the birthing project is that you actually could count how much money we save by taking care of a pregnant woman to make sure she has as healthy a pregnancy and birth and parenting experience as possible. So we've done the math on that. It costs about $250 to actually recruit, train, and supervise what we call our sister friend, which is the woman who actually is like the big sister to the pregnant woman.
Uh-huh.
As compared to, what did I say, $300,000 to take care of a baby who's sick and needs neonatal intensive care for the first 90 days. So depending on who I'm talking to, that's the lead part. The other part that I think is even more important for me is that the basis and the foundation of the birthing project is communities stepping up and being the first responders.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not you see a woman who's pregnant and you say, oh my God, you're going to have a baby. We're going to have a baby. What can I do to support you? And not feeling like, wow, this is really bad and I don't know what to do. And then feeling really overwhelmed because you hear about the healthcare system sucks. We don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough nurses. We don't have this. You can't pay for it or whatever. But many, many, many of our healthcare issues can be resolved much earlier on in the process. And we know that how you feel inside has a lot to do with how your body feels inside and how you react. We know medically, scientifically, from all the research that we've done, that the most important indicator in terms of birth outcome is stress. Just like for a heart attack and all of those other things, it's like stress.
Sure.
And we know that one of the needs, I think it's the second need that humans have, is to be accepted, is to be wanted, is to be included, is to feel that they have a place. And so we know that by reducing stress, it improves your immune system. And then you don't get those little infections and things that cause you to go into labor and deliver your baby earlier before the baby's respiratory system is developed. So I don't want to bore you with facts, but the average Black woman delivers her baby 2 weeks early. The last 2 weeks is when the baby gains weight and when the respiratory system is developed. And so what we do is we try to provide enough social support, keep that woman pregnant all the way through. And it's been proven that that's what we do. Our babies do not come early. Our babies come when they're supposed to come.
That's phenomenal.
They stay until they're done. And the birth outcomes are better. And so we do that by using communities to feel that, what you do is important. That is your purpose. If a baby is being born, it's being born to all of us, not to one of us. And that model has been replicated all over the world now. About that simple.
Oh, God, simple but effective. I mean, how can you not love the outcomes of that? And I would think too, when they talk about stress on the body, from everything that I've ever read, I have never been pregnant, unfortunately. I would have loved to, but everyone I've ever known who's been pregnant in my life, and I'm a godmother to eight godchildren, which is a blessing, the baby probably feels a lot of that stress too. So in terms of their own mortality and their health and all of that, I would guess that all of what you're creating is also creating a healthier infant. Is that true?
All of that is connected. All of that is connected. The other thing about getting people involved is that you're not just involved taking care of the mom. The more that you understand about how things work, the more you can see other things that you can do. But we on purpose recruited sister friends that had access to information about resources that we need that sometimes we have a hard time understanding how to make it happen. Our first sister friends was a judge, because she was the one sitting, behind the bench. And as she says, the view from where she sat was a lot different from being on the bench than when she was a sister friend to a child in foster care. And as a result of that, she made a policy in California that is now implemented in many other states, that any law enforcement officer that comes in contact with the pregnant teen is supposed to make sure that she also gets referred to support services.
Oh my gosh.
So it wasn't like we trained a whole body of people who didn't know something to figure out what should be done, but as people who had access to different parts of the system, that we live in and have to take advantage of and use, they were able to put on their special lenses and say, oh, this needs to be changed, or this is something we can do. This is something we can do in housing. This is something we can do in the criminal justice system. One of my most interesting jobs in the birthing project was being faculty at California Judges College, and actually helping judges understand that we could make better moms out of women who were locked up for prostituting than they could make criminals, make better criminals by having them incarcerated. So I could proudly say to you, with the work that we did with the criminal justice system, very, very few of our moms went back to jail on a new charge.
That's extraordinary. I mean, that's the proof's in the pudding there. I think that makes so much sense too. Do you feel when you talk about the recruiting of the sister friends, to that point about young women who unfortunately are incarcerated, is your criteria a selection process of women that have come from diverse backgrounds, marginalized communities, areas where they feel they can relate to the women that might be needing this support, or do you run the gamut of how you choose these sister friends?
I'm really happy that you asked in that way, because for Black women, there are no protective factors.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes, one of the main challenges is that people think, well, if you had a poor birth outcome, and you're Black, it's because you're 14 years old, you're on crack, and you're not married.
Mm-hmm.
But a Black woman with a master's degree has a worse birth outcome than a white high school dropout.
That is really fascinating.
So on purpose, we don't have a target population of underserved, at risk, probably going to have a poor birth outcome women. We treat all women the same, and we assume, I know from my experience being a woman, women love to have a best friend.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, the famous UCLA research shows that a woman who has a best friend has a better chance of living longer than if he has a husband. So the husband is not the protective factor. The best friend is the protective factor. Although for a man, he's more likely to live longer if he has a wife.
Oh, that's very interesting fact. Well, you're covered twice, which is great. That's super because you have both.
That's right.
That's really great. I'm glad you answered that question, because I think it's nice to know that it's a diverse way that you put these women together with other women, because I think people make assumptions maybe sometimes about programs like this, and women are women having babies, and like the work you talked about at Tulane University that you did around diversity and inclusion was so fascinating to me. It was a similar way that you approached things, and what you observed there, I thought was a beautiful thing to talk about. That's a little bit of a diversion from the birthing project, but it's a similar kind of way that you look at things, is it not? If you want to touch on that.
Yes, because I want to say that the birthing project and working with women opened up my eyes to working with women in general.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a midwife, like I ended up being a midwife, not because I planned on being one, but because I was in situations where whoever was supposed to deliver the baby did not want to deliver the baby because they were too mad with the mom for being pregnant under her circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of had to step up to the plate, except for my first baby was my granddaughter, who I delivered because my daughter, I know if I say this out loud, she'll know it's true. She acted such a fool and was so violent with the person who was delivering the baby. You delivered the baby. And I said, I do not know anything about catching babies. And she said, that's okay. I'll walk you through it.
Oh,
That's
that's cute.
so, but the idea of delivering women makes you understand that you're not going to turn any woman away.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time the Birthing Project had our own clinic where we could take care of women ourselves, we were constantly getting notices from the state that said we were out of compliance because we were delivering, or we were working with women who were not residents of California, undocumented residents. And we just responded back, well, yeah, good. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Someone's having a baby, whoopee. Because how could you turn your back on someone and say, I'm not going to take care of you because of whatever the reason is? And as our world expanded, and the world got bigger, I think our hearts just got not bigger, but more fuller. Like when you have one child or one sister or brother and you get another one, you don't stop loving the one that got there first. You just have more love to give. And by the time I got to Cuba and working with the International Medical School there, where they now have like 102 countries, a whole world of people and a whole world of similarities. You just don't have those kind of boundaries, that, who's in your group and who's not in your group. And I think that DeAndre gave me the first step. And then the deeper I got into it, the bigger my world became in terms of being attached to humanity. Because no matter how terrible you were or where you came from, you were somebody's baby, probably.
Oh, I love that you can look at it that way too, because it is true, right? That's how we all start as human beings. And obviously, we all have our own wonderful, unique backgrounds, and where we come from is very unique and to us, each one of us, and should be revered. But at the end of the day, we are all babies at some point. And I love that you see the world that way. Let's talk a little bit about Cuba before we wrap this segment, because I want to dive deeper in part 3 into something you said that was so profound to me about the birthing project not just being about babies, but we're not going to talk about that yet. Let's talk a little bit about Cuba so that people understand what the connection to Cuba is. I know you were there before the pandemic started, was the last time you were there, and you've gone there so much. Can you tell people a little bit about what you're doing there and what's meant to come next?
Actually, my connection to Cuba has been when the birthing project actually got to the point that we started our own women's clinic and comprehensive agency. Medical students would love to volunteer with us. And as they were running out the door, they would say, and when I'm a real doctor, I'm going to come back and I'm going to work here. We were all midwives because we couldn't afford to pay a doctor. And when the first day that I heard that Cuba had given the United States 500 scholarships for people who wanted to get a fully paid medical education, come back and work with underserved people in the United States, I think I beat the students there. So by the time I got to Cuba, I was waiting for them. And I have been with them now for 21 years. The program is 21 years. Oh, we have graduated a little over 200 doctors as of this year. Our medical director for the birthing project is one of the Cuba graduates.
Outstanding.
And the next part of that with the medical school is actually teaching public health to U.S. students and U.S. health and human service providers from that Cuban perspective. So that's what I'm doing in Cuba.
And you've gotten to see these incredible students come through. I mean, 21 years, you've seen them as, let's just call them like infants in their studies, grow through these extraordinary adults now doing great things for other communities. Is that true? You get to hear all their stories. And
I'm actually on the medical advisory board for the program. And we have to narrow down the number of students that we can send every year to be a part of the program. And we've had to really figure out how to make this work for them in terms of integrating back into the U.S. system. The advantages, they are considered foreign students because they are going in to a medical school in a different country, but English is their first language. They take the same exams called STEPS that any U.S. We treat them as if they are U.S. students that are going to school in Cuba, which they are. And we're at the point now where they have residencies waiting for them.
wow.
Because the reason is Cuba is a developing country, and it has better health care than we do. That's a fact. But they have less money. So we're trying to figure out how we can use in the U.S., make better use of human resources when we don't have the financial resources to get things done. And so that's the lesson learned. And so like now the U.S. Healthcare system is waiting for those doctors that are trained in Cuba to come back and integrate into those areas where we really need that kind of thinking.
I mean, that's really taken it to a whole nother level. Like, let's do it in a more effective, efficient way. And then, have a global mindset too, while we're doing it. Right. Because I think it's probably one thing to train in the United States as a physician, but you probably get a much more well-rounded perspective, maybe training outside of the United States. Would you say?
I would say the U.S. is very global. You walk into any urban area in the United States and you are in the center of the world. The average person probably in the United States, except for indigenous people, came from someplace else. And so the idea of really providing care to our people that makes sense means learning how to provide care to our people that makes sense. You even think about a little thing like, what is your diet at home? What are you eating?
Mhm.
You know, and what are you telling people to eat that they really are going to eat? The idea of looking at ourselves as the global
Mhm.
population that we are is a way of helping us treat ourselves better, take better care of ourselves.
Right. But I mean, learning, you specifically mentioned that their healthcare is better than ours in many ways. So there must be some really great takeaways that your residents are able to bring back from learning that experience of how they do healthcare look differently than we do
And
here.
I could say it in 2 sentences. It wouldn't even take like a whole, segment or
Great.
what.
Great.
That medicine is a part of public health.
Okay.
It's not two separate things. And so the idea is to keep you as healthy as possible, because remember, the country doesn't have money to be putting a lot of money, financial resources into you if you get sick, for real.
Mhm.
And so the idea is to keep you as healthy as possible from the beginning. And so it's a last resort to have to call the doctor. The
Right.
other thing is that Cuba's biggest export is doctors, because everyone wants to be a doctor. Even though you don't make any more money, I think the garbage man makes more than the doctor. You don't have any social class incentive because the neighborhood's about the same.
Uh-huh.
And you live in the neighborhood where you work. That's what a doctor's house is.
Mhm.
So people choose to be doctors because they want to. And 85% of them are women, which blows me away. And so
Wow.
they have so many doctors until there is no doctor shortage.
That's
What they laugh about is that there are so many doctors that whoever the doctor is in your family, all 4, 5, or 6 of them are telling you different things than the doctor that you're supposed to be going to in the neighborhood.
Well, that definitely encapsulates it. That is such great information. Thank you for clarifying that for us. That's a great place for us to wrap this part 2 of our 3-part series with Kathryn Hall-Trujillo, founder of the Birthing Project and a lot of other things. In part 3, Kathryn, we're going to talk a little bit about how you explain to me that the Birthing Project is beyond just being about babies. And I'm going to let you explain it, because the way you do in your words is so profound. And then we'll talk about some of the other things that you've done that are really incredible. Part of being a Shoka and diversity and inclusion, and some other things that we'd like to touch on with your incredible skill sets and backgrounds would be great to share with everyone. So before we go on wrapping this part 2 of our part 3 series with you, please tell people again where they can find you.
Okay, you can find us on the website, birthingprojectusa.org, and you can email me at kht@birthingprojectus.org.
That's great. And again, you'll be able to find that all on aworldonpurpose.com too. And we will see you all, I hope, for part 3 of our 3-part series with Kathryn Hall-Trujillo. Thank you, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome back again to A World on Purpose. I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and we are engaging with our amazing, beautiful, just life-transforming guest, Kathryn Hall-Trujillo, today. We've gone through parts 1 and 2, where we talked about her incredible origin story, her aha moment, pivot to purpose, her inception and invention of the Birthing Project, and all the things that she's doing with that. And what we're going to talk a little bit about now are some other things that she's working on too, around diversity and inclusion, part of which kind of like came out of this Birthing Project. And Kathryn, something you said to me a while ago when we first met was how the Birthing Project wasn't just about, well, welcome back, first of all. Thank you for coming back to part 3 of your own series. Want to make sure you're always going to do that. But you had spoken about how the Birthing Project wasn't just about the babies, and it was something greater. And I would just love for you to articulate that to our audience, because I thought it was just so beautiful and profound and very timely for things that are happening in our world today. So welcome back, and please share if you choose.
Thank you. It's good to be back, So people think that I do this work because I love babies. Like I'm a baby person. But actually, I think I'm not a baby person per se. I don't do this work because I love babies. I do this work because I love big people. And I love big people to be able to be the best human beings that they can be. And the way that happens is to go back to as close to the beginning of life as possible and bring people forward in a good way. That is the heart to me of the birthing project, of actually seeing each human's potential, imagining that human potential, and then doing the things to call forth that potential in each human being and to support and nurture them so that they can grow. I think that when we end up and we look at people that are basically throwaway people, part of why they're throwaway people is because we haven't done the best job of helping them be the best that they can be. That's the heart and soul, really, of the birthing project.
I would agree with that. I think you and I both have personal experience of being in that position of, you know, coming from difficult challenges and feeling like a throwaway person in certain instances. And so having somebody there to guide you through that process, I think, is really meaningful and helpful. And you told some really great stories about some of the children that you started out with as babies and have been able to like see them usher into these incredible adults that you had hoped they would become. Can you share a little bit about some of your wonderful humans that you helped usher into those great adults?
Well, you know, one of them that I just love this story is our brochure baby. So there are 3 babies on the brochure, and you would have to guess which one it is. So I'm
Okay.
not divulging the baby's privacy.
Got
Baby,
it.
20-some years old now. But she sent me a note a few years ago. And the note, I had a picture of her when she was maybe 2 or 3 years old. She was like a little girl, and she was playing. And the next picture of her was her having fun on her second day of college. And what was particularly heartwarming about that is that her mom came to us when she was 14 years old in belly chains. You know, belly chains are how you transport a pregnant woman who's in custody, a criminal justice system.
Oh, uh-huh.
And so he was brought to the clinic in belly chains that look like your hands are clasped over your belly and you're handcuffed with chains around your back so that you cannot escape. This is a 14-year-old.
Oh my gosh.
And from her mom, from her mom's courage and ability to accept support and love and guidance, she was able to watch her daughter graduate from not only high school, but from college and go back to that same community where she now works as a youth worker. That's what I'm talking about now, that when I started the birthing project and we were talking in terms of a program, you know, we're not talking about a program, we're talking about a shift in behavior,
Mm-hmm.
a shift in expectations, a shift in accountability, a shift in culture. You know, where if you do the things that you think need to be done, this is probably the outcome that you're expecting. You know, an asset-based narrative of people versus the things that, you know, what's wrong. It's like figuring out, because of that moment of seeing that child in belly chains, I was like outraged, this outrage that we get every time you hear a story, you see a story where you say, that should not have happened. And then
Absolutely.
you have choices as to what you can do to stop it and what you can do about the woundedness and what you can do about the fear and all the things that cause that moment to be. And so I think that those are the real challenges around the choices we have in terms of how we want to address things that take away our joy.
Mm-hmm. You must have been so touched. I mean, just so touched knowing the impact of that one life, you know, let alone all the others that you've touched. But to get that kind of feedback, it just must make you feel so happy and like there's love in the world and you're being part of that.
That actually is true. And, you know, sometimes we get dinged because we don't do a good job of keeping data. We counted babies until we had 13,000. And I said, well, hell, that's enough. Because each single person, because when I came from the state of California, there was a part of me that had been schooled to count things and base your success on the numbers.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And at some point I thought, I don't even care. Because first of all, when you do something to a person, you don't know when that's going to kick in and when that actually made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
But I was living in the bus station with my 2 children. The men who worked in the bus station, who kept an eye on me, who came by and dropped a candy bar or cookies in my lap for my daughter, who guarded the bathroom door when I had to go in with my children. I don't know those men, but what those men did for me is they gave me a picture in my mind that there are kind people. That there are kind people in the world, and I don't even know who those people are or what they look like. And so when I'm talking to a person, it's really not about, is this going to make a difference? I don't know if it's going to make a difference or not. And I don't know when it's going to make a difference. But the idea is, this is what we do. Why do birds sing? Because birds were made to sing. It's about that. It ain't deep. And so I feel like for every person, that one person matters. So that's the starfish that got thrown back. And I don't care if we didn't do it to 1 million people. We didn't get a grant this week because someone said, well, you're only trying to reach 1,000 people a year. That's not enough.
Wow.
We're sure you're going to find your right organization to support. And there's someone out there looking for us.
Yeah. Well, you've had that success, haven't you? You've told me some great stories about people who didn't want your metrics. They just loved what you were all about.
That's right. That's right. So you never know what position or what form help is going to come. I've had to give up thinking about, it has to be this way or it has to be that way. It doesn't. And I'm open to, and that's kind of the bottom line. People give what they have to give. Sometimes it's nothing more than a smile. And sometimes, like Brian Marks, I have to say his name, over the last 20 years, he has given the Birthing Project $1.5 million. And he never wants a formal report.
Outstanding.
I tease him. I say he's hyperactive. He won't even sit still long enough for me to give him a report. He's like, well, I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. I don't need to have all the details.
Well, I think that speaks volumes to you too, as a woman who vehemently believes in what you stand for and what you've created, and it's hard not to just hear you speak about it and not trust that what you're doing is going to make a huge difference. And not everyone in the impact space or the purpose space have to have those metrics. Clearly, he's one of them, and I think that's something to actually put out as a message for people, that maybe it isn't always about the metrics. It's really just about having faith and taking a chance on somebody who's really doing good things.
And the thing that you have to give, and you never, whatever is on your heart to do. And sometimes we just don't do it because we think that it's not good enough. We think that we're not good enough. How could the message come through us? Yep. And it's just understanding that we all have something to give, and it's unique. But when you put it all together, it's there for a reason. I trust that. I believe that.
I believe that too, myself, and also hearing it from you even more. On the note of not feeling good enough, one of the things I really like to ask my guests often in different ways is, every time you are trying to lead a purpose-driven life with intention, with the desire to do good for other human beings, there are challenges that come with it. There are roadblocks. There are times when it just feels like insurmountable and you might not have what you need. What do you do, and what advice could you impart on humans that are looking to live their purpose and do some things, but they just sometimes feel like, it's never going to work. I'm going to, or they're in the middle of it right now and they feel like giving up. What have you done to help keep you steady and not give up? And how can you help guide others?
I actually do believe that spirit or God or whatever you want to call it never gives us a vision without the resources to make it happen. I believe that.
Mm.
The other thing that I believe is that there is a choice between dwelling in the darkness and dwelling in the light.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I don't want to make that choice. I'm so mad. I'm so upset. I'm so whatever. I don't even want to hear about the light. I just want to slap you. Okay, that'll make me feel better. But but I know I am making a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So I really have to minister to myself to get back to that place that I say I want to be, and to not give up on the long term
Mm-hmm.
by being taken off track by a distraction that's happening in the short term. And when I say that I really have to minister to myself, that means I really have to take time every day to get myself organized from within in terms of how I'm going to lead this day, how I'm going to let tomorrow come
Mm-hmm.
and leave yesterday behind. And I'm fortunate enough to have a medicine bag of stuff in it, things that my mother said. I love that my mother said to me once when I was down, Kathryn, there has never been a night that wasn't followed by day.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, but Mom, there are some awfully long nights. And my mother said, well, you're the one with all the education in the family. Have you ever seen a night that was not followed by day?
Oh.
But so I could fall back on that. I can fall back on the songs that I have learned, that come from way, way deep down. And the truth of the matter is, every once in a while, I do have to go crash a birth to remind myself that God is still sending little people into the world, that she has not given up on us.
Oh.
But it's like really having a medicine bag of things that I can go to get myself in the space I need to be in. That's how I manage to get through the hard times and the challenging times.
That's such great advice. I want to ask you one more question, and you exude such an incredible authenticity and it's like I'm in your presence and I just feel an absolute trust for you, and you exude a confidence too that comes obviously with all of the things you've been through, all that you've witnessed in your own life and in the world, and what you've done with your birthing project. You mentioned not feeling good enough. Do you ever, at this point in your life, ever have that moment come up for you where, geez, I don't know, I don't feel like I've done that much, or I don't feel good enough? Or are you like solid in that moment where, yeah, I'm good, I think I've done great things, and what can I do next?
I think those two things go together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I consider myself a community professor.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my gift from Ashoka, of modeling an innovative way of teaching, of using community wisdom and community people to be a part of what we teach people and call education. So I'm a continual learner. I can't teach what I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And every day I learn something that I didn't know yesterday. And so every time you set that bar a little bit higher, that means the bar is set a little bit higher. And you say, well, I could jump 3 feet. I don't know if I could jump 4 feet, or I could say, well, I don't know. Every time I'm in a group, a professional group, and everybody is flaunting all the stuff that they know, one of the hardest things that I had to do one day was to say, you know what, but that's not why I'm here. I actually, I'm not trying to prove how smart I am or what I know. I'm here because I like to bring people together on one accord. And that you don't get a degree doing that. And, that's not something but I didn't think that was good enough to be a part of the group. because in order to be a part of the group, you have to be just totally like this intellectual, whatever. But I mustered up all the courage I could and said, this is what I do. But oftentimes I still have that feeling because it's like, what do people want to hear about this? They want data, they want this, they want that, and whatever. And I'm basically saying, that the thing that we have to figure out how to do is love one another. That we have to figure out how to take care of ourselves and take care of this planet. I have, I'm a great storyteller to myself. I tell myself all kinds of stuff to help me walk through fire. It's like, it won't burn you. Somebody else did it before. But it's
Right.
like, what do you have to do
Right.
to actually do what you have to do?
Right. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's nice for people listening to know, a lot of times it's hard when if you're feeling alone in your own self and thinking these things and not knowing how to like step outside of it and think others that you respect could actually think that way then also. And so I think it's beautiful that people get to hear that part of you. I can't believe we're almost done. I'm going to have you back for a second series so that we can dive into the diversity inclusion part of your life that we really didn't get to touch on. I really would love to do that. If you'd like to come back and do another series at some point, because I think that's important work that you're doing too. But the Birthing Project was really special. And something I think people really will walk away from understanding not only how human lives matter, from birth all the way to death, but like you had an epiphany, you saw it, you went after it, and you made it happen, and it was real for many years, and it influenced the lives of so many babies to adults. So it's very impressive. I'd like you to kind of tell people if there's a call to action you had to support you in the Birthing Project, or if there's people that could be involved in, your medical school, or what is it you'd like to ask people to do? Because part of the reason this show exists is to mobilize people into action, either to find their own pivot to purpose or a way they could support you. What would that be for you?
Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to use this moment for a call to action that I think that our country is at a pivotal moment.
Great.
At this point. And it's really not about the Birthing Project. It's not about any of that stuff. I think it's really about us really taking a good look at how important is it to us that a baby is not just born into a family, not just born into a community, but actually born into a country. I mean, we get a little passport. I use that passport a lot. But that's the passport that said, this is the people that claim you. If you get in trouble any place in the world, you go find the U.S. Embassy and they will take care of you. And one of the things that I am claiming in my older age is that I am claiming this country. That no matter, it's like being in a family and everybody is fighting and everybody is this or that. But when it gets right down to the bottom part of it, this is ours. This is all we have.
Absolutely.
And so my call to action is that we think about that and we make a decision about whether or not we actually want to claim that, because I don't think we can claim the country without claiming each other.
I completely agree. I think that's the best call to action I've heard so far. Thank you for that. Kathryn Hall-Trujillo, I adore you, and I'm so blessed to have you in my life, and so blessed that you would share yourself with all of my guests on A World on Purpose. I really hope that everyone feels deeply connected to their soul after listening to you, and we are going to definitely have you back. I just want you to know. So be ready.
Well, we're going to be sister friends for siempre. So
I know for the beginning of time.
There's no getting out of it.
I know, and you're stuck with me too. So I couldn't be stuck with it better. If I was stuck on a desert island with someone, it would love to be you. That would be like the best thing ever. Kathryn, thank you so much. And everyone, please make sure you go back. If you have not, if you happen to download this episode before the other two, please go back and listen to parts 1 and 2 of Kathryn Hall-Trujillo. It's just so moving and so profound. And thank you for being my guest on A World on Purpose. And everyone, thank you for tuning in. Please come back to listen and subscribe, share, like, and make sure you go and check out the Birthing Project USA and also all the great work that Kathryn's done outside of that. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you for tuning into A World on Purpose. Thank you, Kathryn. Thank you for taking this journey into A World on Purpose with our incredible guests. To learn more about our amazing guests and their inspiring purpose-driven work, please go to aworldonpurpose.com. Don't forget to look at our call to action of the week to mobilize your desire for purpose into action. A World on Purpose can be found on Apple Podcasts and all the major podcast platforms, and the video version can be found on YouTube. If what you heard today inspires you, please write a review and like and share on the platform of your choice. We'd love to also hear from you and learn your pivot to purpose and the meaningful work that you do that lifts humanity. Send your stories to info@aworldonpurpose.com. I'd like to thank our World on Purpose team for making this show a reality. Once again, I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris. Thank you for tuning in to A World on Purpose. I look forward to seeing you soon.